So basically, it all started, when I was consulting for many companies at the same time, and mainly on customer premises. And you are oftenly, you have many projects to track, to work on, and different topics of project, product strategy or product management. And there are a lot of interruptions going on. And I want to be kind of accurate to my customers and be sure that when I work on one particular project, I don't charge another project. I know I have some friends who are lawyers who can charge the same hours to 4 or 5 different customers, and it's kind of acceptable, but that was not my approach. So I really thought I needed a timestamp, something to really know when I start an activity, when I stop it, and also what kind of activity it was. Because the whole idea is being able to, at the end of the month, to do an invoice and making sure that it's accurate with enough details to give the feedback to the customer. My customer was also interested in me giving them some advice about effectiveness in the workplace and methods and so on, so I needed to show the ability to do that. So I started some kind of a Scrum project on the side to basically develop myself a solution, because I've been looking at some solutions out there and they didn't really fit my criteria of tracking. Because there's quite a lot of things to track. Of course you want accuracy and basically convenience, but you also have some high level kind of goals that I had behind this. So one of the goals is basically the fact that having multiple projects, and in each project you have different kind of activity, either in the project or inside a design meeting and so on. And so scalability is very key aspect of that. And the granularity of it, how many things you can measure. You wanted also something like traceability, like going back and say, okay, what exactly happened here? Yes, I was in a meeting, but what was it about? What was the important part of the meeting? What was the outcome of those 2 hours or 10, 20 hours that we spent on the project? Truthfulness was important as well, because one of the key decisions in developing the tool is the fact that in many cases, you multitask. Every one of us multitask. We believe we can do more than one thing at a time. And the reality is that we cannot do everything well. At any point in time, we do one thing very well, and the rest is kind of secondary. So the forgiveness is also comes in because sometimes you start an activity, but you didn't track it. Oh, shit, I forgot. So you want to be able to backtrack it very quickly and not waste time on it. So I started using mobile phone, of course, and sending SMS text message to say, I'm starting this, I'm stopping this. And with that, you can only really track big chunk of things. An hour, 2 hours activity would be fine. But then when you start trying to say, okay, well, how much time do I spend really in meetings when it's boring? It's like, how many hours do I spend overall per month where I don't do anything, just in a meeting and waiting for time to go. So the granularity goes down to the level where you can understand a bit better, what's going on. So that's a little bit what I wanted to do. The other thing is that work is one side, and actually I realized that I work basically half of my time, and the other half of my time is my personal life. And I started tracking that as well. I think that, in order to understand it all, the whole picture, I need to do that. So I ended up having a kind of a mobile app which was able to start and stop very quickly the activity, change the category over time. At any time, so for example, I say, okay, now I want to track how much time I spend speaking, and so I could track that now with the system. So what did I learn from that? Basically, the first thing is really self-awareness. It's like when you start seeing what you spend the time on, what you track defines who you are, basically. And so the self-awareness is kind of looking back into what I'm doing, what I thought I was doing, and the reality of my time in there. For example, the fact that you kind of zoom into yourself when you track more granularity, and you see more things about yourself, and then some of the defects that are unflattering start coming out. And such as, for example, you believed I was believing that I was spending enough time working out and so on. And actually, it was not very much, many minutes per per hour, per week or something like that. So with that, I also believe that, for example, with my wife, I spend enough time, quality time with her. Quality time is when we discussed heart-to-heart and things like that. And it was kind of, for me, maybe an hour a day, it was pretty good. But an hour a day on the 24-hour days is just 5%. 5% of your time, if you count the 24-hour days, which I was trying to do, including the sleep and everything. So the question is, do you track quantity or quality? So mostly the time I was tracking was mostly quantity, because it became kind of a second nature, putting out your phone, I'm starting this, I'm stopping this, and so on. Kind of getting a little bit second nature. So another thing I realized that there are trade-offs I can make when I start knowing how much time I spend, on the Sudoku and wasting a couple of hours, per week trying to solve the most difficult Sudoku, or working out, like Tuan was doing, going swimming. So it also boils down to a lot of self-discipline, not being tempted by things that are going on out there. And the things I don't track, because no matter how much I want to track, there are times between tracking that I can't track, and sometimes it adds up to maybe 10% of my time. It's the big unknown. Maybe I didn't really live those minutes because I don't even know what happened during those minutes. So basically, it boils down to, if you start nano tracking, go very, very deep, you can maybe learn more about yourself. But then the Heisenberg principle I was talking about earlier was, well, you don't know what you're going. You just spend your time tracking, pulling up, pulling down, so on. And it takes at least 20 seconds to get something in and out and type, what you did within that time. So it's all about change for me. Basically, we don't like change, although change can sometimes be good for us. So the postulate I'm making today, and I'd like to have feedback from you, is that anything you're tracking, at the base, there's time. So if you track your weight or your glucose level and so on, what does time do? What does time matter in that tracking? What's the impact of the time you spend doing that, or spend doing something that matters to that? So that's a little bit, my speech. And I wanted to know if any feedback, any suggestion to take it to the next level. We'd like to integrate that into a solution that would be, for medical purposes. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So, any questions and or feedback for Phac? Way at the back. You want to meet me halfway?
So I understand that if you have to start and stop when you track, then it's going to be a lot of overhead. How is the possibility that you have automatic recognition, like in certain space, recognize that you're working out, recognize that you are sitting down and typing, or you're sleeping, something like that?
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's where the new devices are very interesting. For example, from either our near field communication, NFCs, you could put a lot of sensors in your home, and then you walk into a room, it would know where you are, and would immediately do that. But the question is that you need to be, if you have a very regular day, you know exactly what you do every day and so on, that's great. Actually, at one point in time, I was using a QR code scanner, so I would put some QR code a little bit everywhere, and also I have a pad of QR codes, so I would start project A, I would scan project A, and boom, I was starting it. And also, if I start something else, it automatically stops the previous one, so I don't have to really stop one to track. But the idea is to have the system recognize what you do. So that's where input from new medical devices, even the Fitbit or maybe the sleep sensor. One of the things, for example, I'm tracking is how long I sleep. But the problem is that, when you start hitting the button, say I start sleeping, you better go to sleep right away. I'm lucky because when I close my eyes in like less than 2 minutes, I fall asleep. And so that's good. But in some cases, in the morning I wake up, for example, I drink a glass of water. So I log it, I say water, but I go back to sleep. So I say, I snooze. So my system's still tracking that I'm sleeping, but I'm kind of snooze and dozing off on and off for maybe 10, 20 minutes. And when I wake up, I stop. But all that time is counted as sleeping because I don't use the zero yet. But the idea would be if I could connect those things together, then it would track. But the idea as well is that time is really at the center of all those measures. And if we could do that, I think the whole picture would be easier.
So is there a specific app you use to track your time, or is it something that you built yourself?
Yes, that's not something I did myself. I looked at many apps out there. They are either for business purposes or something like that, but not for the whole picture. And also, I wanted to be able to change it as I learn more about what tracking time means. So right now it's something, custom that I have developed.
Hi, Phac. I'm very interested to know what have you learned after you have been aware of where do you spend your time? What have you optimized your life? And secondly is what kind of granularity do you break down your time? Do you say I have a meeting for 1 hour, or do you break down to more granularity? What happened that meeting?
Yeah, that's definitely a big question. The first thing I learned in that, what I changed in my life, is definitely spending more time with my family, because I work pretty hard. If you look at the chart I showed earlier, I basically sleep on average 25% of the time. That's 6 hours per day, and like 15%, 50% or 48% of my time is working, and that's around 11 hours a day or more. So I want the rest of the time to be, really quality based. So when I spend time, there's no argument. We're always very happy and so on. So I know that time is very precious. So that's one thing that changed, for me. The other thing is that it really depends. I realized that I don't have a very long period of time of activity except when I'm in a meeting, in a business meeting. Yes, 1 hour, 2 hours. But when you're not in the meeting, you start working on the project, you get interrupted, you get another meeting, and that's where your time is fragmented. And the switching cost is actually very important. I realized the time to just pull out the phone, get it up and down is like 30 seconds at least that lost in one part. So if I try to measure anything less than 10 minutes time, now 1 minute out of that is 10%. So the accuracy is already really skewed then. So usually I measure something like 45 minutes or something like that, 45 to an hour.
So first, a quick comment for Android users. Time Tracker is free and does exactly the same as the app you showed us.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual question is that, do you actually keep learning new things about how you spend your time after, say, 2 or 3 weeks of doing this? Because it seems that the time that you spend on tracking only matters if you do this really long term. And I would assume that after a week or two, you just learn your lesson and you can move on and make changes.
That is correct. Assuming you have a regular pattern, your pattern does not change over time, but then you might want to track something else. The idea is that I don't track the same thing over time. I change the thing I track depending on my interest during that moment. See what I mean? For example, I wanted to track how much time I was interacting with my family, because most of my siblings live in France and not here, and I would start a category just for that part, and it would fit within the whole category. So I would like to know more about the Android, app that you mentioned. Does it track exactly, the way that I mentioned and so on? Okay.
Exactly the same as the UI you showed us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm not sure if my suggestion is going to be practical, but I'll make it anyway. A lot of us probably have heard the study showing that if you spend most of your time standing instead of sitting, you can expand your lifespan by 7 years. You see, there are people standing. And I wonder if you would track how much time you spend sitting versus how much time you spend standing.
Oh, that's a interesting question. I heard something different though, that it's better to eat a stone sitting than a meal standing, because apparently when you sit you have basically more time that you spend thinking about eating and chewing and so on rather than standing. But it's a good question.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Phac. Thank you, everyone.